What is up, my YouTube friends? My name is Cody Tang. Let me start this off with a hot take immediately. I don't care about The Last of Us. I don't think it's a masterpiece, nor have I ever thought this. The story is entertaining, for sure, and I love Ellie and Joel, but it is not amazing. It's not even come close to revolutionizing a genre, and its gameplay merely checked all the boxes of your average third-person shooter. That's not to say that it doesn't have a few good ideas sprinkled in there, but nothing that the industry would be gunning to imitate. Don't get me wrong though, The Last of Us is a fun game, but that's it. A story does not make a video game a masterpiece. So now with that said, I'm gonna defend The Last of Us 2. The easiest thing to note right off the bat is Naughty Dog's treatments of its employees. If your reason for boycotting The Last of Us lies with that, then I won't chastise your view at all. It's a valid reason, I don't have anything to defend that with, and I agree with you fully. However, if your reason for disliking the game is simply because the game is bad, then you most likely have confirmation bias. So you already went in hating the game, and anything that you might not agree with happens in the game just confirms that the entire thing is bad. Terrible AI? It's not the first game with that issue. The mechanics haven't changed too much since the last game. Sounds like mini sequels out there. The Uncharted series, God of War, 2D Mario. Games are tweaked and new levels are made. That's generally how all game sequels act. You're asking for a complete overhaul if you expect a massive jump from game to game. There are some games capable of that achievement, and I applaud them for that. But those aren't the norm. New mechanics have been introduced and the levels test new and old systems in different ways, or they work exactly as you expect them to. As much as even I like to joke about how every game has the ability to jump, jumping and proning are still new additions to the series, meaning it's new mechanics being introduced. When jumping was introduced to Breath of the Wild, it was welcome. So it's welcome in The Last of Us. Those aren't the only new things introduced either. Just to name a few examples, dogs, a new infected, swimming underwater, using grass to conceal yourself and dodging. But gameplay isn't why people play The Last of Us, so I don't expect you all to actually care about the things I just said. What you're all upset about is Abby's existence, the LGBT politics, and the disrespect of Ellie and Joel. You already went in hating the game, and it is what it is when it comes to gameplay. But, well, maybe that doesn't sound like you. What about people who didn't get any of the plot or agenda spoiled to them and still ended up disliking the game? It's an easy answer. Abby was written wrong. Since it's The Last of Us and people are really only here for the story, there was honestly no saving this game since that's the story they decided to go with. I think Neil bit off more than he can chew here. Not just was Abby written wrong, but he's clearly not capable of handling multiple characters thoroughly. Ellie takes a very strong leadership role in this game, being able to push the story along by herself alone. However, Abby's story is contrived. It's made to make sure that Ellie and Abby never meet up at any point, so that Ellie is capable of killing all of Abby's friends. The first issue is the introduction to Abby. She's presented as a villain immediately, and all you know is that she killed Joel. So because of this, that's your first impression of her, and you don't like her, and nothing that happens in the story will ever change that. Abby gets a presentation similar to a cartoon villain. How do you make a cartoon villain seem evil? You make them kick a puppy. It's the same idea. Everybody likes puppies, so seeing one get kicked, well, that guy's irredeemable. And that's how they showed off Abby. Joel was the puppy, so now we just see her as evil. But that's not actually what they intended you to see her as, because The Last of Us then goes on to try and convince you that she's a good character. In storytelling, if you want us to be conflicted on whether we should like a character, then you don't immediately have them do something like killing one of the main characters for shock value. And that brings us to the next point. Joel dies way too early. Somewhere along the lines the story was changed. Remember this trailer? It shows that Joel is on board with Ellie's plan. How can he if he's supposed to be dead? Now Joel dying in the game is nearly inevitable. His character is completed and his arc is over. Ellie is his new Sarah and he gets to watch her grow. So now obviously the focus has to be on Ellie, and Joel has to be written off in some way, so a death is most likely. If we're going to go with how they set up the story, then Joel and Ellie should have been on a revenge story together. Joel and Ellie's relationship has been splintered after Joel told Ellie what really happened at the hospital with the Fireflies. By the time the players gained control of the characters, Ellie and Joel agreed to fix their relationship. Joel and Tommy go out on patrol and Ellie's getting ready to do her own. From here, we'll just make minor tweaks to fix the story. It should have opened with Ellie going through the hospital and discovering the truth about herself, then have it lead to the years later scene with Ellie and Dina. They wanted to make this big mystery of why Ellie is mad at Joel, considering that everybody references it constantly, but that's so forced and is used as a cheap mystery that isn't at all necessary. After the Dina and Ellie scene, the game can start normally with you playing as Joel and so on. However, instead of Joel being the one to die, it should have been Tommy. I'm sure anybody could come up with a better way to do it, rather than have them both act out of character and just get caught by the obvious bad guys that they've never seen around Jackson, but eventually having it lead to Tommy's death. Back at Jackson, obviously it's hit hard to lose Tommy and the stability of the place would probably drop without him, but since the story is about Ellie and Joel's revenge, we don't really need to see how they deal with that because they go to Seattle anyway. Since Ellie and Joel both had a good relationship with Tommy, this sets the two on a similar goal, which would allow them to fix their broken friendship, and eventually get over what Joel did to Ellie. The dynamic would be refreshing to have it again be about Joel and Ellie, but with the switch perspective of Ellie instead. Eventually, some sort of fight could break out between them, which would lead to Joel or Ellie leaving, or something to that extent, and eventually being captured, which ultimately leads to Joel's death. This would lead to Ellie killing Abby rather than letting her go, since the revenge would be more fresh in her mind. You can still have Dina and Jesse here if you want to, since the two can take up the void that Joel will have made after his death, which will make you like the two more, since they clearly display how they care about Ellie. You can fill in the details or rearrange that stuff yourself, but this gives time for us to fully understand the dynamic that's happened between Ellie and Joel, giving the story flexibility to alternate between healing and backtracking their relationship, without having to force it in through flashbacks. And it makes Joel's death that much more impactful, rather than just upsets us through shock value. Meanwhile, Abby's story being reduced to the other half of the game is so stupid. They clearly didn't know what to do with her character, and playing as her is honestly not necessary. The reason that we do play as her is so that we can care about her, so that when Ellie finally goes on a second adventure to kill her, we're supposed to be divided about Ellie choosing not to go through with it anyway. This is a similar setup to how we were supposed to feel in The Last of Us 1 when Joel saves and then lies to Ellie. The difference here is that we care about Ellie and would not have wanted her to die as well, so we would have done the same thing Joel did. We can relate to what his character feels. In The Last of Us 2, we don't care about Abby. All we know is that she killed Joel, so she has to die, no questions asked. Nothing is going to change that. So when Ellie goes on a second adventure and then chooses not to kill her, it just pisses us off, rather than makes us think, well, we like Abby, so it would have sucked to see her go, but I still do want revenge for Joel. We're not conflicted because we don't care. So Abby should have died, especially considering Ellie killed all of Abby's friends and went on a rampage against random squads from Wolf. It's completely inconsistent with the narrative they've been showing us up to that point, so it's extremely unsatisfying that Abby wasn't killed. If you want Abby to be a likable character, going with this new revised story, sure, she killed Tommy, but we don't really care about Tommy too much, and he wasn't a driving force for the story, so we're upset he died, but we're not destroyed by it like when Joel dies. Abby's story should have been removed, and it's hard to really place her as a character, but if you want her to be one, then her entire story needs to have been shown much earlier. We need to already know why she wants to kill Joel before Joel dies, in order to sympathize with her. They tried making her story sort of about dealing with the scars, but really they just ended up making Abby do random things. Having Abby respond to things Ellie has done and having her chase her around until she eventually finds her would have been a much more solid story. It would have been hectic for Wolf and Abby to deal with both the scars and Ellie, so delegating the war while looking for Ellie, who is constantly on the move, would have helped build us up to understand Abby's character and struggles more. Instead, they just want us to see that Abby is a nice person. We don't care if Abby is a nice person if you haven't built her up as a character yet. She's a brand new character, and all you've had her do so far is make her kill Joel. Abby being constantly separated from her crew was not a good idea. She has 3 friends that she can constantly work with who don't die until the end of the story. But they threw them away to have Abby hang out with this Asian kid. It's not a smart move. The opening of Abby's story is fantastic, and if we didn't already hate Abby, it would have made people enjoy her as a character more. However, the rest of her story isn't a story at all. It's just busy work that involves Abby being a good person. So we don't actually understand her character besides flashbacks. Making Abby a sympathetic character failed because you killed Joel so early rather than in the midway point of the game. They killed Abby's character faster than they introduced her, and that's a shame because Abby's not a bad character. She was just presented as a villain rather than somebody trying to avenge their father. But by the time we knew that, we were already convinced that she was evil, so nobody cared why she did it. Another issue with Abby's writing is who was casted to play her and her design as a character. Laura Bailey, as good of an actor as she may be, does not match Abby's character. Laura's inflections are way too girly for a character who looks like she bench presses bloaters for fun. It's jarring because her appearance tells the story of a more manlier character. Ashley Johnson's portrayal of Ellie matches the tomboy persona in both voice and appearance. Ellie is designed great, and so is everybody else in this game. Nobody feels out of place, and their voices fit. It's all great until you get to Abby. That's no fault of Laura Bailey's, because Abby's personality doesn't even match her appearance anyway. Even if Laura Bailey got the inflections right, her voice just sounds way too high to be coming out of Abby. As much as Naughty Dog loves them some Troy, Nolan, and Laura's voice simply does not fit. So they failed to create a believable bodybuilding woman. Speaking of appearance, Abby is really ugly. I mean, hideous. As much as the game tries to convince you she's attractive, women that look like this aren't attractive to men. So not every girl can be attractive or pleasing to the eye. Sure, there's nothing wrong with that. There are ugly people in the world. But if you're going to tell me she's supposed to be pretty, she can't just be pretty in her own way. The majority of people will have to think the same. This is what pushing an agenda looks like. Just because some features can be pretty to a small minority doesn't actually mean it's pretty. Abby's body type is extremely odd. It's that of a woman on obvious steroids. Yet we're supposed to believe she got it all naturally by working out when she was around 16. Women can't get that big naturally. It's just not gonna happen. Women can build muscle, but unless they're taking some enhancers, this is never happening. So trying to make a muscular female for women to look up to was also unsuccessful. Abby's face to body looks fine as a teen and much later when she's been bound and starved, but when she's all bulked up, you get this strange double chin effect, like her head is receding into her neck. Abby often looks like a man rather than a woman, and her body definitely shows that. It's not just because her appearance isn't favorable, it's legit because she has the body of a man. She's just filled with testosterone. The transgender jokes come from the people at Naughty Dog thinking women can naturally get like this. It's absolutely deserved because that's just not how muscle works for women. Abby is not transgender. They don't make a big deal about Ellie being gay, and just because the cast has a bunch of women, it doesn't automatically mean the story is bad. If someone wants to make an all-women cast, it doesn't have to be that deep. And they don't push it in your face that men are bad. They just wanted most of the cast to be women. By policing what sort of characters someone chooses to make in their story in an unreasonable sense, that literally means that you guys are the ones creating the politics, not them. They don't make a big deal about any of it. Multiple races in a zombie apocalypse story doesn't matter. The story would be no different if Ellie was Asian or black, or if Joel was Arabian or Indian. Everything that the anti-politic gang argued about is treated like it's just the norm in this game. It's funny that the anti-political people are so upset when in reality, if they truly don't like politics, then why do they even care if it's not being force-fed to you? The game's story is being treated like it's doing the same thing that Captain Marvel did, and by no means is it in your face like that. Captain Marvel deserves every shred of hate it gets. That movie does nothing but push a feminist agenda. The Last of Us 2. The only way you can say it's pushing a pro-feminism agenda is if you are the one placing it there by seeing a cast comprised of mostly women. They don't make the men look useless, and the women in there, save for Abby and Ellie, don't really even have a role to play at all. The game is by no means a masterpiece. It doesn't deserve a single reward. The story isn't great, but the game is fun. At no point am I saying that you should give your money to this game. I'm not saying it's an amazing game. I'm not saying anything to that extent. The graphics are good, the gameplay is fun, the acting is great, and there are moments of the story that I liked. Every point of Abby being introduced, I'm not as critical as you about it because I already don't care about The Last of Us, but I can see what they were trying to do. That doesn't excuse the fact that they executed this absolutely poorly. This is the worst case scenario you could have done for the story of the game. I think it should have ended after the first one, and they should be a whole new IP right now. But they wanted to continue with The Last of Us 2. I hope there is not a Last of Us 3, because I don't think anybody is going to be buying that. But I also don't care. This should go without saying, but it's a common problem. Everybody review bombing this game using the same basis argument are no better than those in cancel culture. If you're going to criticize something, criticize it properly rather than create problems that don't actually exist. You're saying you hate something, but some of the things you're complaining about are simply not there. If you want them to improve on something, tell them exactly what they did wrong. Don't fabricate, or they can never do better.